Hola, mi gente. My name is Maria Lopez Twena. I'm the author of the bilingual children's chapter book and animated family series, Mariví the Master Navigator, and the creator of this new podcast, Navigating Dos Mares, or Navigating Two Seas. Mariví the Master Navigator was created for all immigrant families, but especially for children who are growing up with two cultures and two languages, navigating life for themselves and their foreign-born relatives. This podcast was created to help us older kids, or the adult children of immigrants, better understand our childhood experiences and the impact that they've had on our lives. In this episode, we'll hear our guest share their story about growing up bilingually and biculturally, and how their childhood experiences became their superpower. Thanks for joining our community. Bienvenidos. In this episode, I'll be speaking to Karen Comas, an adult child of Hispanic immigrants and a co-host of Motherish, a podcast. Karen is also a content creator and a tech executive. Karen, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, so excited to have you here. So I know you're familiar with Mariví and intimately familiar what it is to be a U.S.-born daughter of Hispanic immigrants. So tell us about your background, where your parents were from, your household growing up, etc.
Sure. So my parents were born in Lima, Peru. They came here at a very young age. They came here in 1982. They went straight from Lima to Miami. I will share this funny anecdote because this is from their early time. When I was born, literally at the hospital, I'm already born. And they're like, okay, well, what are we going to name her? Like, we don't know. And my mom said that in that moment, the midwife who helped her through her delivery was a British woman, and her name was Karen. And my mom was like, you know what? This is perfect, because in Spanish, you say Karen, and in English, they'll say Karen, and they're not going to mess up her name. And to me, it's like still crazy, but also very admirable that she was already thinking about that. I mean, they must have really been struggling. So it's very interesting. At the same time, my house was full of salsa, merengue, whatever, mainly through my dad, and then Luis Miguel and all these things through my mom. So it's just like a very complex musical blend for me. But yeah, that's, to this day, I still am like, I'm really, really Latina, and I'm also really American because I, grew up with classic rock and eating bagels every Sunday. Like, it's just very confusing. I don't know where I land in all of this.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, this is super interesting. A couple of things that I think I find super interesting. I've never met a Latina named Karen, and I see that what that's done was they accepted American society and wanted you to be American, knew that they would be here long term, and that was your birthright, right? That's what I'm hearing back.
Yeah.
So how about cultural conflicts in the home? So it sounds like you were exposed to both American and Latino practices, behaviors. Did they consider you Americana, or did they want you to hold on to your culture?
I don't know if holding on to my culture was a very direct thing. I think there were nuances that were very specific to my culture. Like the top of mind, and the one that just recently brought up a funny conversation with my group of mom friends, was the no sleepover thing. That was there was no question. There's no chance on earth I would ever have a sleepover over anybody's house. Even hanging out, it was your friends can come here, but we don't know where you're going.
That is so interesting, because we have an episode, the last couple of episodes, we're talking about Weekend Ways, North Star, the third book in the series, and the sleepover, and how challenging that is for a Hispanic family. What did you speak at home? What language or languages did you speak at home?
So, my first language was Spanish, because at the time, my parents only spoke Spanish. I started preschool when I was 4. They were able to stretch it out for quite a while. But when I started preschool, I very quickly learned English. And so there's a funny anecdote that they love to share and throw in my face, which was like, I was already like fluent in English. I was probably 4 or 5 at this point. And I told my mom, I don't want to speak Spanish anymore. And I actually have some blonde hair here because it was the summer and I was like outside all the time. I was like, look, my hair is like right here. It's like a little bit blonde at the tip. And if you look at the hair on my arm, it's like also blonde. So I'm American and I'm going to speak English. And my mom says to me, no, aquí te vas a morir de hambre. Like, you will literally starve. She's like, anything that you want, you need to ask for it in Spanish. And I was like, oh, what? Like, so food, like literally dinner, Spanish. And I'm like, oh. I didn't realize until, I think in my early 20s, I had like a boyfriend, several boyfriends. I have one boyfriend who pointed out, who was like, it's weird. You speak in English to your parents and they respond in Spanish. And I was like, that's not true. That's not true. I'm like, we all speak the same language. And he's like, no. Like, literally, you guys are speaking different languages and you're carrying on a full conversation, sometimes like heavy, deep, emotional conversation in 2 different languages. And I was like, there's no way. But it is. It's true. And I never noticed it.
Interesting.
What I will say that was different for me, what I felt was different in school compared to other, my, let's say, counterparts that were maybe more acculturated or their parents were more acculturated at that point, was that I took charge of all the things that needed to happen, right? I learned my mother's signature so early on. And it wasn't because I was signing bad things. I got 1 detention, like, ever. It wasn't because of that. It was just because, like, don't worry about it. I got it. I got this, whatever. Even like later on when it was time to apply to financial aid and everything, I did all of it on my own. And they were like, you got it? I'm like, yeah, I got it. And, I think it turned out fine, but there is a level of like guidance and maybe benefits to having people who already have that experience that like maybe this time, like next time around when my daughter is in that situation, I could provide some guidance that like a 17-year-old doesn't know,
Yeah. Yes.
A lot of things that maybe high level of responsibility without anyone asking me to, because they never pressured me to do it.
Yeah, so it's interesting because that's one of the things we hear constantly and consistently. Most of us have played this role of translator, interpreter, ambassador, Sherpa, call it what you may, that we take the lead in navigating or guiding them through life in the U.S. in many ways. And that as much as when it's happening, it may be okay. When we look back, sometimes we think that was a lot of responsibility for a child, right?
Yeah.
Did you play that role of interpreter and translator? Sounds like it if you were signing school slips and things like that, or no?
I mean, I think I did it just because I was also a little bit of like a smarty pants. I prefer to not say, the other term, but like, so like, I got this, I can do it. Like my parents always said they always said that they kind of treated me like a decision maker, like a third decision maker in the home, because I always presented myself as such. And that my mom sometimes would actively have to try to think and be like, actually, no, like she's just a child. Why are we asking her this?
So did you guys ever have cultural conflicts? I heard the sleepover comment. Were those openly discussed? Were they just swept under the rug? Was it just something like, no, I said no and it's done. That's it. You're not going.
My mom was really big on never saying no just because. She was always like, I'm going to explain to you why. And if you disagree, it doesn't matter. Basically, like, I'm going to explain why. The only other major conflict that came after that really was like was I wanted to have the college experience. Why not? Like, this is what I want. I want the college experience. Everybody is having the college experience. And my mom was like, everybody is not you. Like, you're not everybody. And at the time, I had gotten a full ride to a local university. And she was like, I just don't understand why you would want to go and get into debt to have the college experience if you have a 100% paid college experience here, and you can live at home. I want to go away. I want to live in a dorm room. Whatever. Why? And they were like, no, if you want to have the college experience, I still get triggered by this. If you want to have the college experience, then here is the list of all the things that you're going to have to pay. They threw everything in there. They put your health insurance, your phone, your car insurance, your this, your that, your blah, 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 blah. Like, we're not paying for anything. But it's your decision, Karen. If you want to go, you decide. But here's the list of things you're going to have to pay. And I was like, guys, this is so unfair. This is so unrealistic. And my mom was like, no, you want to go because you like this guy and you want to chase him. And I was like, what? No. I mean, maybe, but like, also no. Like, I lived experiences that I would not have lived had I, had the college experience, and gone away. I'm sure if I had gone away, I would have lived things that I obviously didn't live. But I got to study abroad, which was really incredible. Like that was an awesome thing that only happened because everything else was paid for. So I was like, what's your excuse for this one? They are the consequences of that life. I didn't actually realize a lot of them until I started working at Meta. When I started working there, I was like, wait, what? It was like an entire other universe opened up that I had lived 28 years without even knowing existed. I will explain, right? So prior to working at Facebook, I worked at a radio station, like iHeart radio station, but it was a Hispanic radio station. So like same, right? Then I worked for 7 years at NBC Universal, but at NBC Universal, I worked at Telemundo. So same, like every day at 3, somebody was coming by with a little colada. Like that's where I immersed into like my 25% Cuban side of heritage that I have. But when I started working at Facebook, the very first day, I fly to San Francisco to then go to Menlo Park. The San Francisco airport was like the first, like, what? Because, Facebook headquarters for my orientation. And I started seeing the way everybody was dressed. And I was like, oh, okay. I am dressed extremely inappropriately for this. I was coming from basically show business of Hispanic media, like colorful and like, and this was like the Patagonia vest and the, Lululemon leggings. And I was like, okay, I need a different wardrobe for this job, like, or for when I come here to do this job here. I needed to kind of like lean more into Karen, not the 2020 Karen joke, but like, I needed to lean more into like my American side and show them how American I can be, Yes. Like, yes, they hired me to do work for Latam, but like, I'm super American. I can totally do this. So I literally had an entire side of my closet that was for when I would travel to Menlo Park, like different Karen. And that's where I started realizing that I grew up in a little bit of a bubble.
Yes.
And I had finally stepped out into like, welcome to America. And I was like, what? And like the connections that people had growing up and the networking that you do because your parents know somebody whose son works here. And that's how you got this internship. And I was like, that's how the world works. I did all of this crap on myself. Like, at least the part of my career, it was mind-blowing to me. Mind-blowing.
Oh, so interesting. Sounds like a lot of your experience when you went to Meta was more of what a lot of children of immigrants experience when they go to school for the first time, when they realize this is a totally different world, totally different culture. It's completely different. As we close on this, did first of all, I find it interesting because you were in North Miami. Did you never felt, or did you feel that you left your roots and then returned to it? Do you have a retroacculturation story?
So I never stopped speaking Spanish, obviously, because they were depriving me of food if I tried to stop speaking Spanish. So emotional Spanish. That was I didn't have that emotional connection of how to speak from a place of love in Spanish. I didn't have that connection in my head, right? I could speak, I could engage in deep conversations, but in terms of words of endearment, I didn't have any of that. So when my daughter was born, for me, it was a huge, I'm going to speak to her in Spanish. I'm going to speak to her in Spanish. Now it's getting harder for me because she's 5 and she's perfectly bilingual and she knows that I speak English. So she's like, come on, mom, we don't have to do this. We don't have to pretend. And I'm like, but we do. But I was holding her in the hospital. She was a day old and I wanted to talk to her. And I'm like, I don't know how to talk to you. I don't know how to say hey, you little baby. It just felt weird when I would say it in Spanish. And I was like, oh, what is that? And there wasn't that mind-heart connection for me. My husband is months to figure out how to create that emotional connection in language and be able to express myself with her, now 5 years later, it's very natural. And I'm just ay, sí, mi amor, ven para acá, blah, blah, blah. I speak to her in an endearing way. And I know how to tell her that I love her and feel it and mean it in Spanish. But that was never something that I had until, 35.
Super. Wow, that's super interesting. I have never heard a story like that. That's super interesting. So the retroculturation was driven by a linguistic or love language need to be able to express. Okay, very nice. Yeah. Very interesting. Okay. How have you turned, and we'll end with this one, how have you turned your childhood challenges or opportunities, because they're both, right, into your superpower today in adulthood?
Well, I'm a very good problem solver. I lead with solutions most of the time. And I think that has been very helpful for me in my career. I think it's been helpful for me just as a friend, as a contributor to my family. I will say, however, that with that superpower, as with most superpowers, you have to learn how to use it, and you have to learn to give it boundaries sometimes. Because I think a consequence of growing up that way is that I tend to want to be the one who resolves everything. Where I'm like, don't worry, I got it. Don't worry, I got it. I got it, I got it, I got it. And that's not necessarily great for life in general. It's very nice for the people around you. But it's not so nice when you're that person. Because if you haven't learned boundaries for that, if you haven't learned to put limits and say, you don't have to take on so much to the point where then you're not okay, then that becomes kind of a complex thing that you have to deal with, and then it has consequences and stuff. So I do think that for me comes directly from the childhood experience that I had. I think it is a superpower that I think, is derived from being a child of immigrants, from watching my parents have no choice but to resolve and get things done. We always become more conscious of mental health as we become more evolved, generation after generation. We say, hey, actually that can really burn you out. Actually, you may not want to always do that. So I think with that superpower that has been incredibly beneficial for my career, I think now I'm kind of like, all right, well, how do we polish this and turn it into something that is still very good for you and makes you very unique, but that also doesn't like burn you along the way, you know?
Yes. So powerful. So true. We've talked a lot in the past about, we need to be in control, children of immigrants. And I think it's because we had to be in control as children. So it's like you end up, always navigating, you take on these roles, you don't even realize, right?
Right.
And because you had to fix it as a child. Wow, this is super interesting and very powerful. If any of our listeners want to reach out to Karen, you can follow her at Karen on her Instagram account. She's got a huge following. Thanks for listening, and please join us on our next episode of Navigating Dos Mares. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at We Are Mariví, or check out our books on our website, wearemariv.com.